NASA is planning a permanent return to the moon, this time with the goal of establishing a lasting human presence. This ambitious effort involves the American government, NASA, and a wide range of international and commercial partners. The vision extends far beyond a simple landing. While getting to the lunar surface is a complex challenge, it's a feat humanity has accomplished before. The truly groundbreaking work will be what comes next: constructing a permanent base, essentially a small city in an alien environment. The exact methods are still being developed, but there are some incredibly practical and innovative ideas for supporting life beyond Earth. First, let's consider the location. The moon is vast, and all previous human landings occurred near the center in flat, safe areas that allowed for straightforward radio communication with Earth. That approach worked for the 1960s, but the new target is far more compelling: the lunar South Pole. This region is a dramatic landscape of impact craters, mountain ranges, and the remnants of ancient volcanoes. Some of the deepest valleys and crater floors exist in permanent shadow, untouched by sunlight for millions or even billions of years. These dark, cold areas are likely rich with water ice, delivered long ago by asteroids and comets. NASA has pinpointed 13 potential landing zones for the Artemis program, mostly on small, sunlit patches along crater rims or low mountain peaks, surrounded by deep shadows and rugged terrain. This makes the region a scientific treasure trove, but it also presents significant dangers for the people who will live and work there for weeks or months at a time. This level of operation demands infrastructure on an unprecedented scale. All the basic necessities of an earthbound city must be recreated in one of the most hostile and resource-scarce environments imaginable. So, where do we start? With roads. Yes, even on the moon, we will need roads, landing pads, and other solid surfaces to build and operate from. The primary obstacle is dust. The lunar surface is blanketed by a thin layer of incredibly fine, fluffy dust. Each grain is sharp and abrasive, similar to broken glass. During the Apollo missions, this dust was known to cut through spacesuit layers and scratch helmet visors. Compounding the problem, the dust is also extremely clingy. On the Apollo lunar rovers, dust accumulation clogged radiators and caused the vehicles to overheat. The issue is that without an atmosphere and with very low gravity, once dust is disturbed, it can travel great distances. When Apollo 12 landed, it touched down about 180 meters from an older probe called Surveyor 3. When astronauts inspected the probe, they found it had been sandblasted by dust kicked up during their own landing. If we plan to build a base with frequent landings, takeoffs, and vehicle traffic, we must find ways to control this dust. This means constructing roads, landing pads, and hardened areas around our camp's military. This is a spray-on product used to stabilize dirt roads and helicopter landing zones in the field. It proved effective in Afghanistan for turning desert sand into a solid material, particularly for eliminating the dust clouds from helicopter operations. While this is a potential quick fix, it's not ideal. It would require transporting all the material from Earth, essentially polluting the moon with microplastics. A more sustainable and scalable solution for building a lunar city would be to melt the surface dust into solid glass. The European Space Agency is currently experimenting with this concept in a project called PAVER. Scientists are using simulated moon dust and a powerful laser to fuse the material into a glass-like surface. This idea isn't entirely new. It dates back to 1933 when there were proposals to pave Earth's deserts by melting the sand. After all, glass is simply melted sand. While impractical back then, it might be the best option for a future moon base. We likely wouldn't need to bring a giant laser. Instead, a large magnifying glass could be used to concentrate sunlight. A specific type called a Fresnel lens would be ideal. It uses grooves etched into a flat sheet of clear plastic to focus light, eliminating the need for a heavy, curved glass lens. A Fresnel lens just under 2.5 meters wide could do the job. However, given the geography of the South Pole, where the sun stays low on the horizon and shadows are long, lasers might still be necessary as a supplement. Regardless of the method, the process would be slow. Estimates from the PAVER experiment suggest it would take about 115 days to create a 100 square meter landing pad with a 2 centimeter thickness. That's roughly 100 times slower than paving a road with traditional asphalt on Earth. It's a massive undertaking, but we will be doing a lot of driving on the moon. The primary mode of transportation will be pressurized rover vehicles, like the Lunar Cruiser being developed by Japan in partnership with Toyota. These rovers will allow movement around the base without constantly having to put on and take off spacesuits. Astronauts could move directly from a pressurized habitat into a pressurized rover and then to another building. They will also be essential for exploring the wilder regions of the moon. The Lunar Cruiser is essentially a recreational vehicle for the moon, capable of supporting 2 astronauts on expeditions lasting 30 days or more, powered by a hydrogen fuel cell. Having a mobile home is great, but where will the main living quarters be? We need to think in terms of both short-term and long-term accommodation. Building a moon base won't happen overnight, and NASA has already designed the first lunar house, called the Foundation Surface Habitat. This 3-story structure combines a metal frame with an inflatable module and can support a crew of 4 for about a month. Typically, 2 astronauts would occupy the habitat while the other 2 are out exploring in their rover. The ground level is a 4-meter diameter metal structure containing the airlock, spacesuits, and a science station for geological work with lunar samples. Astronauts climb a ladder to the 2nd level, which is the inflatable module that expands to 6.5 meters in diameter. This area houses hygiene facilities, exercise equipment, and a biology lab for studying the effects of the lunar environment on plants and animals. The 3rd level is the primary living space, featuring beds, a medical station, a kitchen, and computer workstation. There is also a human research lab where the astronauts themselves will be studied to understand how long-term life on the moon affects the human body. Once we move past the initial foundation phase, the next step is to construct permanent structures that offer greater protection and security. We need to shield inhabitants from dangerous cosmic radiation, mitigate the extreme temperature swings between lunar day and night, and protect against meteorite impacts. To achieve this, we return to the very origins of human architecture. We build with bricks. Just as scientists believe we can melt the surface to create glass roads, they also think we can bake moon dust into structural bricks. The concept involves using an inflatable or metal habitat as a core, which is then encased in a protective shell of brickwork. This should block most radiation and micrometeorite impacts while providing insulation to make heating and cooling more efficient. China has already begun testing its own moon bricks. Their design is for an egg-shaped structure called the moon pot vessel. Construction would be handled by robots, incorporating traditional Chinese bricklaying techniques with bricks made from lunar soil, supplemented by 3D printing. In 2024, China started experiments creating bricks from 5 different types of simulated lunar soil, testing 3 distinct methods for heating the soil into solid rock. Later that year, they sent these bricks to the Tiangong space station, where they are now placed on an external rack. For the next 3 years, the bricks will be exposed to the vacuum of space, cosmic rays, and extreme temperature changes to test their durability. There's also a more unconventional concept that combines glass melting and habitat construction into a single giant spherical structure on the moon. A company called Skyports has received funding from the NASA Institute for Advanced Concepts to develop the idea. The process is essentially large-scale glass blowing. You heat the moon dust until it becomes a molten liquid, then use compressed gas to inflate it into a large sphere. With no atmosphere and minimal gravity, very little pressure would be needed, and the structure could grow to enormous sizes without collapsing. For added protection and insulation, you could create multiple layers of glass with air gaps in between, similar to a multi-pane window. It may not be the most practical idea, but it is certainly inventive. None of this is possible without a reliable power source. Solar energy is an obvious candidate. Most lunar missions to date have relied on solar power, and it has worked reasonably well. However, solar energy has a major drawback on the moon. Because the moon rotates much slower than Earth, it has an extremely long day-night cycle. 2 weeks of continuous sunlight followed by 2 weeks of total darkness. This wasn't a problem for short human missions that lasted only a few days. But for autonomous solar-powered landers and rovers, they can only operate for the 14-day sunlight period before freezing solid during the subsequent 14 nights. Most never turn back on when the sun returns, and if they do, they often don't function as they did before. Looking back at the map of the 13 potential Artemis landing sites, you'll notice the extensive shadows. Many of these areas are in permanent darkness, and those are precisely the locations where we expect to find the water ice essential for sustaining a moon city. The solution is to go nuclear. Nuclear power in space isn't new. China has been operating a nuclear-powered rover on the far side of the moon for several years. NASA has used nuclear-powered rovers on Mars for over a decade, and the Voyager probes from the 1970s were also nuclear-powered. However, these are all very small-scale operations. These generators use the heat from naturally decaying radioactive material to produce a few watts of electricity. This is sufficient for a robot, but it cannot be scaled up to power an entire lunar base. We need a nuclear power plant on the moon, and that is exactly what NASA has been working on for years. It's called the Fission Surface Power Project. This uses the same fission reaction that is standard in Earth's nuclear power plants. Atoms of uranium fuel are split, releasing a tremendous amount of energy as heat. In space, where there's no water to boil for a steam turbine, a device called a Brayton converter is used to turn that heat into electricity. The process is complex, but the important thing is that it works. One advantage of the shadowy craters that never see sunlight is that we can place a nuclear reactor inside them, and it will never overheat. The challenge is that these reactors must be small. NASA's specifications require them to weigh under 6 metric tons and be no larger than an average car. For a nuclear power plant, that's incredibly tiny, but for a space system, it's still quite large. Rolls-Royce is one of the companies leading the development of space-based nuclear technology. While most people know them for luxury cars, Rolls-Royce has over 60 years of experience building nuclear reactors for British Navy submarines. Their current microreactor design aims to produce between 50 and 100 kilowatts of electricity. On the high end, that's enough to power a small factory or several average homes. Just one of these units would provide more than enough power to get a small moon base started. By stacking several together, we could power an entire lunar city. This is our first outpost beyond Earth, a true gateway to the solar system. If we can master not just living on the moon, but thriving, building, and expanding there, we will unlock new possibilities in space that are simply impossible to achieve from Earth. This is how we venture into the great unknown. If you found this journey into our lunar future fascinating, make sure to subscribe for more content, give this video a like, and share it with anyone who dreams of the stars.